Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Giri Varadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Randana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Randana Jamuna Tera Banachari Jamuna Tera Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashto Tarasati Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashto Tarasati Srimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem se Gaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Sri Mayapura Navadvip Dham Ki Sri Purushottam Chetra Ki Sri Ganga Mai Ki Jai Sri Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Maharani Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtana Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, the Summum Bonum, Chapter 44, the killing of Kamsa. Text number 8. Oh. Okay. That's what we've got up there. Okay. Vajrasara Sarvango Malo Shailendra Sanibho Kvachati Sukumarango Kishoro Naptayovano Kwa Vajrasara Sarvango Malo Shailendra Sanibho Kvachati Sukumarango Kishoro Naptayovano. Kwa Vajrasara Sarvango Malo Shailendra Vanibo Kvachati Sukumarango Kishoro Naptayovano Kwa Vajrasara Sarvango Malo Shailendra Sanibo Kvachati Sukumarango Kishoro Naptayovano Kwa Vajrasara Sarvango Malo Shailendra Sanibo Kvachati Sukumarango Kishoro Naptayovano. Ladies. Kvachati Sukumarango Kishoro Shaptayovano. Kwa, where, on the one hand, Vajra, of lightning, Sara, with the strength, Sarava, all, Ango, whose limbs, Malo, two wrestlers, Shaila, mountains, Indra, like the chief, Sanibho, whose appearance, Kwa, where, Cha, and, on the other hand, Ati, very, Sukumara, tender, Ango, whose limbs, Kishoro, two youths, Naapta, not having yet attained, Yovano, their maturity. What comparison can there be between these two professional wrestlers with limbs as strong as lightning bolts and bodies resembling mighty mountains, and these two young, immature boys with exceedingly tender limbs? Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmaye Sri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam rupa kada mahiyam tadati svapadantikam mukkam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate garim yat kripa tamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. So there's no purport to this verse. But putting this in context, what we're observing here in this section of the Bhagavatam, the killing of Kamsa, is an insight into the minds of the ladies of Mathura. Right? Just to put this in context. And they're being challenged by this unfair matching. Well, it's not a match. There's a conflict arising in their observation of the circumstances, the situation. And Srila Prabhupada explains this in the Krishna book, and also it's this conflict that arises in the minds of the ladies of Mathura and their meditation. The Srimad Bhagavatam is a very unique literature, and of course very important literature, and why Srila Prabhupada has us study the Bhagavatam on a daily basis, because the Bhagavatam gives us this view or this insight into the minds of a devotee, many devotees, and often in a state of conflict, right? And so here's a conflict, or there's some tension. There's what creates drama, actually, tension, right? Between what is expected, or what one hopes for, and what one actually achieves, or one gets. And sometimes they don't match. Or very often they don't match, actually. Right? So, we'll read on. Text number 9. Dharma vyati kramo hiyasya samajasya dhruvam bhavet yatra dharma samutishten nasteyam tatraka hichit. So here they're protesting. They're protesting. Dharma vyatikrama. Dharma vyatikrama means there's been a transgression of dharma. Right? We've got young boys fighting mountains of men. At least apparently. But this is an indication of their relationship, because even though we know that Krishna is the Parameshvara, he's the supreme personality of Godhead, at the same time, the residents of Vrindavan, and we see here the residents of Mathura, because of their relationship with Krishna, they don't recognize him as the supreme person. Right? Very interesting. The intimacy of the relationships that Krishna exchanges with the residents of Vrindavan and also here in Mathura, covers the Aishwarya Bhava, if you like, or the recognition of God as the supreme, and rather they're in a mood of exchanging very intimate and familiar and close exchanges with Krishna. So they don't recognize him as the supremely powerful. Or even when Krishna reveals his supremely powerful position, they're kind of, ooh, what was that? Isn't Krishna wonderful? But they still think of him as their friend, or as their lover, or as their child. Right? These are very intimate relationships that the devotees exchange with Krishna, but which cover his extraordinary power. Does that make sense? The Lord in Vaikuntha is the master, the controller, the upadrashta and the anumanta, the overseer and the permitter. He's the supreme controller. And of course, most people, or many people, and Prabhupada mentions many religious traditions teach of God as the supreme, but generally in the mood of, going to the temple and praying to the Lord, please give me this, please give me that, please fulfill my other desire. They see him as the supreme Lord and Master, but also as the order supplier, right? The order supplier. So they come and, we may also do it too. We put 500 rupees in the hundi, and then we think, okay, Krishna, now give me a crore. Right? I've given you so much, now you give what I am worth. Right? Whereas the mood of the residents of Vrindavan, and of course that's not a bad thing, that everybody sees God as the Lord and Master is not a bad thing. But the devotees of Krishna generally don't want, the elevated and the intimate devotees of Krishna don't want something for themselves. Their mood is different. Their mood is, let me do some service for you, Krishna. Right? So most people are thinking, Krishna, you're the supreme controller, please do something for me. Whereas a devotee is thinking, Krishna, you are the supreme controller, the Lord and the Master of everyone, but please let me do something for you. This is a more intimate relationship, right? Where the servant wants to serve rather than be served. In fact, it's the antithesis of a devotee to be served. A devotee wants to serve. There's a rasa, or a feeling, an experience that can only be relished when one renders service. And that relish is that taste is what keeps the devotees coming back to render service to Krishna, because there is no comparable experience. It's a param drishtva, it's a higher taste. So, the ladies of Mathura are complaining or protesting. This is irreligious, right? And if anybody stays here, they'll be implicated in this irreligious activity. That is, matching a mountain of a man with just a boy who hasn't even matured. Text number 10. Na sabham pravishet pragyaha sabya doshan anushmaran abruvan vibruvan agyo nara kilbisham ashnute. A wise person pragya should not enter an assembly if he knows the participants there are committing acts of impropriety. So they're saying, this is wrong. This is wrong. Young boys fighting big men is sinful. Darshan. Yeah, darshan. So, if having entered such an assembly, he fails to speak the truth, speaks falsely or pleads ignorance, he will certainly incur sin. Right, so here, ignorance is no excuse. Ignorance is no excuse. Prabhupada gives the example. A child may not know that fire will burn. Right? But what happens if the child touches fire? You'll get burnt. So the ladies are protesting. This is adharma. If anybody claims to be pragya or learned, then they should stand up to this inappropriate behavior. And ignorance is no excuse. Ignorance is no excuse here. Text 11. Vaigataha shatrum abhitaha krishnasya vadanam bhujam vikshatam shrama varyuptam padmakosham ivam bubhi. Just see the lotus face of Krishna as he darts around his foe. So Krishna is moving very swiftly. So they're also relishing this scene because Krishna Krishna means most attractive, right? And so it's interesting. They can't not look because he's so attractive, but at the same time they're protesting. Whoa, what's going on here? So you can imagine the tension that the ladies of Mathura are experiencing in this situation. On the one hand, they're protesting. On the other hand, they can't look away. Neither can they leave. Right? They're saying, we shouldn't be here, but at the same time, they're absorbed in observing Krishna's beauty. Just see the lotus face of Krishna as he darts around his foe. That face, covered with drops of perspiration brought on by the strenuous fight, resembles a lotus covered with dew. So very beautiful and attractive sight. Now, next verse, text 12. A description of Balaram. Kim na pasyata ramasya. Mukam atamra lochanam. Mushtikam prati sarmasham. Hasa samramba sobitam. Don't you see the face of Lord Balaram? With his eyes copper red from anger. From his anger toward Mushtika, and its beauty enhanced by his laughter and his absorption in the fight. You know, sometimes when people are in a fight and it's very tense and challenging, then what's the response? They laugh. Huh? So Lord Balaram's got bright red, angry countenance, angry eyes, but at the same time he's laughing. Huh? Now, text 13, verse with the purport. And quite a long. Punyabhata prajabhuvo yadayam nrilinga gudha purana purusho vanachitra malyaha gapalayan sahabala kvanayami chavinum vikridayan chati giritra Rama chitangrihi. How pious. So here the ladies of Mathura are meditating on the residents of Vrindavan, and especially the gopis. How pious are the tracts of land in Braj. For there, the primeval personality of Godhead, disguising himself with human traits, wanders about, enacting his many pastimes. Adorned with wonderfully variegated forest garlands, he, whose feet are worshipped by Lord Shiva and Goddess Rama, vibrates his flute as he tends the cows in the company of Balaram. Purport. In this verse, the devoted ladies in the audience point out the difference between Mathura and Vrindavan. They want to indicate that in Vrindavan, Krishna simply enjoys with his girlfriends and boyfriends, whereas here in Mathura, the Lord is subjected to harassment by the bullying tactics of professional wrestlers. Thus, the ladies are condemning the city of Mathura because of their pain at seeing Krishna in what they consider an unfair wrestling match. Of course, Mathura is also one of the Lord's eternal abodes. But here, the women in the assembly express their love in a critical mood. So, the Acharyas explain, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami explain that the ladies of Mathura are attracted to Krishna in an amorous mood, right? But the environment in which they're observing this or experiencing these feelings is not conducive to that emotion or that bhava, that mood. Right? And so they're thinking, how fortunate. And I'll read the next verse. It gives more insight. I won't read it. I'll just read the English. What austerities must the gopis have performed? With their eyes, they always drink the nectar of Lord Krishna's form, which is the essence of loveliness and is not to be equaled or surpassed. That loveliness is the only abode of beauty, fame, and opulence. It is self-perfect, ever fresh, and extremely rare. And in the purport, the BBT purports, it's commented. The word meanings and translation for this verse are from Srila Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, Chapter 4, Text 156. So, the ladies of Mathura are glorifying the gopis and meditating on the good fortune of the gopis. And they're asking, what austerities did they perform in order to experience that Madhurya Rasa without the inconvenience or without the conflict of this fight? This is why they're upset. They are attracted to Krishna in this mood of Madhurya Rasa. Amorous feelings. They have amorous feelings towards Krishna because he's so attractive. He's so beautiful. And so on the one hand, they're feeling this attraction for Krishna, but on the other hand, they're repulsed by the setting in which they're observing Krishna and Balaram having to fight with Chanura and Mushtika. And so they're comparing the mood of Vrindavan with the mood of Mathura. And in Mathura, what's Krishna facing? Basically, in one word or two words, what is Krishna facing in Mathura? Starts with an F. Fight. Yes, a fight. And so that's in one sense, it's a conflict between those feelings of love and affection and attraction that the ladies have for Krishna and Balaram. They're criticizing the circumstance and the situation in Mathura, and also reflecting on the good fortune of the residents of Braj, because they can fully absorb themselves in the vision in the mood of affection and love that the residents of Vrindavan can experience uninterrupted or unsullied by this fighting. Right? It's the opposite to what the gopis experience in Vrindavan, or at least the meditation of the ladies of Mathura. So they're really appreciating how fortunate are the gopis. And they're asking, what austerities? Of course, Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explain that actually you can't perform pious activities to achieve this position. Interesting. You can't. This position is actually reserved for the Nitya Siddha, the eternal associates of Krishna. To have this intimate and close relationship with Krishna in the mood, the role and the position of the gopis is not something that actually can be achieved. It is set aside for the eternal associates of Krishna, right? Which is interesting. In our philosophy, in the Gaudiya philosophy, we're taught by the acharyas and taught by their example. Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Narottam Das, and the followers of Rupa, basically the Rupanuga Bhaktas, enter into that mood of Vrindavan by rendering service to the servants. Right? What Chaitanya says, Gopi Das Bata, what is it? Gopi Batu Padakamalayo Dasa Dasano Das. The mood of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas is not that we take the position of the eternal associates of Krishna, but rather we take the role and the mood of becoming their servants, or even becoming the servants of their servants. And why we're followers of Rupa Goswami? Because that's the mood that he teaches. That's our line, actually. Right? And Prabhupada mentions in the Nectar of Instruction how we, if we're following the process of bhakti properly, then our aspiration is to come under the shelter of these eternal associates of Krishna and following in their footsteps, assisting them render service to Radha and Krishna. We can then enter into the same mood, but not take over those roles. Right? So here the ladies of Mathura are meditating on that, those qualities or those characteristics of the gopis, and are lamenting or are critical, complaining actually. Jai Gaudita, Jai Radharashpi, Hare, Jai Shri Ram Lakshman, Hanuman. They're relishing the beauty and the attractiveness of Krishna, but lamenting, oh, how unfortunate we are that we're in this setting where Krishna is having to fight with these mountains of men, these monsters. Right? A very interesting situation. And the advantage of the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam in this section is giving us an insight into the mood of the devotees. The ladies of Mathura, and also into the position, the mood of the gopis, who are the highest emblem of devotion. and who we all, actually all devotees aspire to follow the gopis in their mood of service. So we're fortunate we have this opportunity to enter into Mathura Dham, and also enter into Vrindavan Dham and relish and meditate on these pastimes of Krishna in Mathura, and of course also Krishna in Vrindavan. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
On one hand, the ladies of Mathura were expressing the adharma, and they felt this was wrong. But on the other hand, we see that they recognize that Krishna and Balaram, they're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So why should they be worried? Because on the one hand, yeah, they looked like innocent boys, but on the other hand, they knew that they were the Supreme. So is that a mix of a kind of feeling for Krishna? On one hand, they know he's the personality of Godhead, but on the other hand, they think that he's susceptible to the fighting with these big wrestlers?
Yes. It's interesting, isn't it, how we can hold conflicting experiences and conflicting emotions in the heart and in the mind at the same time. And that's that bubbling, if you like, of the conflict is what's bringing out these prayers of this appreciation by the ladies of Mathura. Because you're right. They say, what is it? Nrilinga. He's in a human form, right? But at the same time, he's the Purana Purusha. Right? So they've got this mood, and it is a conflict, and so therefore we get this bubbling over of the, hey, what's going on here? This is not right. Even though actually it's all right because Krishna is the Supreme Person. So, previously I was just thinking of a pastime that Srila Prabhupada mentions about Benjamin Disraeli. Benjamin Disraeli was the Prime Minister of England, right? And the Chancellor of the Exchequer came to visit the Prime Minister, but was stopped by his secretary. And the secretary said, the Prime Minister is very busy at the moment, you'll have to wait a little while. So he was waiting and waiting and waiting, and he became impatient. So he snuck in, and he found Benjamin Disraeli, the Prime Minister, playing with his grandchildren. And he was on his all fours, on his hands and knees, acting as a horse for his grandchildren. So Prabhupada gave this as an example of how, a big man can also be a little man as well for his grandchildren, which is a more intimate exchange. Right? He put off the big man, the Chancellor of the Exchequer is the treasurer, the man with the money. Right? So he put him off because he was playing with his grandchildren, right? Which is much more intimate and more relishable. So on the one hand, we can be a big man, and then on the other hand, we should actually be we should be servants. So we see here this blending of moods. So it's not unusual, and it's not a contradiction that on the one hand they're seeing Krishna and Balaram as young boys, because they are, and on the other hand they're seeing them both as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which they also are, right? And that's sometimes it's that mixing of relationships and those exchanges that the empiricists can't appreciate in bhakti, because in bhakti we can blend exchanges of feelings and emotions of rasa and be comfortable with it, even though there appears to be a conflict. Right? It appears to be a conflict, but at the same time, it's actually relishable. It's a bit like, sometimes in India, in certain traditions, you start with the sweet, and you eat your sweets all the way through the meal. Right? Whereas in the culture that I was brought up in, you eat a sweet last. Right? What's the saying? No meal's complete without a sweet. So we mix things together when we're having a meal. Sweet, sometimes with the savory, or the sweet with the rice, or whatever. In Bengal, what do they do? In Bengal, they have tomato chutney at the end. Yeah. So, we learn how to mix, and this is what the Bhagavatam teaches us. Actually, one of the things the Bhagavatam teaches us is how the mixing of mellows can be appreciated, and especially here by following the example of these devotees. Devakinanda and Prabhu.
Yeah, can it be like in Mathura, there is basically the Aishwarya Bhav.
Yes.
In Aishwarya Bhav, they see Krishna as Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yeah.
But same time, they are also ladies. They have motherly affection. So we see when Krishna appeared, Mother Devaki saw him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. She offered respect to him, many prayer in 4 or 5 slokas as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But same time, she was mother.
Yes.
And she prayed him, please, upsanghara idam rupam, please hide this form. Otherwise, as Kansa will see, he will kill you. So her motherly nature came out. Although she knew that Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead, still her motherly nature came out.
Yes.
Same way, Mother Devaki is also here, and they see Krishna as Supreme Personality of Godhead, but still they see him a small boy. So the motherly nature is also coming out.
Yeah.
So two rasa here is being mixed.
Yes, yeah, and it's interesting when Krishna appears in to Vasudeva and Devaki, he's the four-handed form. Right? Whereas in Vrindavan, you don't see the four-handed form; you just see that Krishna in his, as mentioned here, Nrilinga, human form. Anything else, Prabhuji?
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, yesterday class Prabhuji explained about that the Chanora news that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and no one can defeat Krishna. It was understood by him. Then why he did not surrender to Krishna and save his life and let the Kamsa die peacefully?
That's a good question. He's a demon. He's a demon, and so, sometimes the demons come to this realization, but just a little bit too late. Because Krishna manifests in a form of death personified. And so their natural inclination is to challenge him. But then when he's about to chop off their head or, break them in half, then they realize, uh-oh. But that doesn't occur to them until it's too late. And so, Prabhupada mentions, Krishna appears as death personified to the demons. Okay, we've got the book distribution marathon to get stuck into. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai.